I'm very good with wrecks. So if your car's been involved in a wreck, call me for a diminished value report. Call 727-541-1741. You may be owed some money for the lost value of your repaired vehicle. And visit us at GulfstreamMotorsports.com.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hi, and welcome to Joy on Paper. My name is Bria Burton. I am the guest host, filling in for the amazing Patsy Gill, and this is Sci-Fi Hour. I am so excited that I get the opportunity to chat with two amazing sci-fi authors, and we're going to just get right to it because we have on the phone one of our guests. His name is Edward Sands, and I would just like to introduce you all to Edward, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I am thrilled to be chatting with you after we just had the amazing opportunity to meet in person at a writers' conference. And Edward is your pen name. So would you prefer that we continue speaking as your pen name, or would you like to be referred to as a different name?
Yeah, the pen name is just fine.
Okay, awesome. I bring that up because a lot of the listeners are writers, are readers, and they are big fans of such and such author. And sometimes they don't even know the author is actually using a pen name. And I'm going to just start with an extremely personal question. Do you prefer not to have your real name out there? Is that one of the reasons you did a pen name, or were there other reasons?
For me, actually, the goal was just to try to stay humble. I
love that.
Novel came out when I was a teenager, and I learned pretty quickly about the temptation to start thinking about any kind of book success as part of your identity.
That is incredible. I love that answer. And so, Edward, we are talking sci-fi today, and you initially had a fantasy novel that you published a few years back, but in more recent times, you've been doing short fiction that includes quite a bit of sci-fi. Let's talk a little bit about your journey as a writer. So, have you been writing since you were a kid? Have you been, and let me mention to the listeners right now that some of the stories we're going to be talking about are featured in magazines like Havoc, which is a sci-fi fantasy flash fiction magazine. A story, and I'm going to read the title to make sure I don't mess it up. I just lost it. Tell us the title of the story you just sent me.
The End of Everything.
The End of Everything. So short story featured in a flash fiction literary magazine. And tell us a little bit about your journey and what got you into fantasy and sci-fi.
Yeah, so I've always loved reading, and I've always dreamed of writing the kind of books that I love to read. So I started writing my first novel when I was 14, and it was picked up by a small publisher when I was 19. So basically out of high school, I thought I was just going to be a full-time author and tour around selling books. But
let's pause there for a moment. You were 14. Yeah. Did you started the novel at age 14 and you finished it by the time you were 19 and got a publisher?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is such an amazing story. I knew a little bit, but not as much in detail. So what was the title of that novel that was published?
The title of that one is Kestrel's Midnight Song.
Kestrel's Midnight Song. I love your titles, by the way. Okay, so 19-year-old you gets picked up by a publisher. Did you have an agent or just a publisher?
I did not have an agent. It was a small publisher in Connecticut.
Okay, wonderful. And so your first novel is published at 19. Tell us a little more about that journey at such a young age. This is not the common story for authors that I speak to have published so young.
Yeah, so I just started at the local county fair in my small town, and I did a bunch of pre-orders there and then shipped out the books once they arrived with media mail, which was kind of fun because it resulted in a 20-foot receipt for all the shipments.
A 20-foot receipt that I'm sure was at the U.S. Post Office printing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That probably was interesting for them.
Yeah. And so then I just started doing book signings wherever I could, wherever they would have me.
Mm-hmm.
Went from there.
Okay. So that was your first novel. And then did you publish any subsequent novels with this publisher?
I didn't publish any more novels with them. After that, I started to have to enter the workforce with a more traditional job, and that slowed my writing down for a while.
And that, I think a lot of the writers listening will probably relate to that part. And do you mind me asking what type of day job you had?
I ended up primarily working as an electrician.
Oh, that's awesome for a sci-fi writer to have that kind of job. And what a necessary job out there. I mean, pretty much all jobs are necessary, but in the sense that you are doing something extremely valuable for modern society, I will say, in electricity. So how long are you continuing even now in that job, or is that something that you no longer do?
Currently, I'm not working as an electrician. I work as a machine operator, but
okay.
We'll see what the future holds.
Yeah. And so I mentioned you and I were able to meet in person. So just this past weekend was a writers' conference specifically for Christian authors, but it's a sci-fi, fantasy, horror conference, very niche conference called Realm Makers. And I was there continuing to hone my own sci-fi craft. What brought you to Realm Makers, and when was the first time? Because this conference has been going on for quite a few years. What led you to first end up at Realm Makers, and then tell us a little bit about how it went this year?
Yeah, so I think I originally heard about Realm Makers just through mutual friends who are also Christians writing the speculative genres. And the first time I was able to go, I believe, was in 2018.
Okay.
And it's always lots of fun and great way to make connections. And I'm always inspired to write as soon as I get home, which is great.
Awesome. And is that how you felt when you were there this last weekend?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What were there any highlights, just any tidbits that you took away that really stuck with you? Something someone said, a speaker or fellow author that you met? I
really enjoyed Alan Arnold's continuing sessions.
I'm glad you brought him up.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about his session really stuck with you?
Just the encouragement to write and to not worry about how the writing is going to fit into market demands or the kinds of things that really take you away from the creative process.
Mm-hmm. And do you happen to have any temporary tattoos on you right now? I know this is a strange question.
I did have temporary tattoos on, but I ended up wiping them off because I had an in-person interview that I didn't think it would be.
Okay. So to fill in the listener, so if you're watching, I'm gonna hold up my arms. I still have the temporary tattoos on from Alan Arnold's incredible workshops. The title of his workshop was Slaying the Seven-Headed Beast, and he gave everybody in the room temporary tattoos of things like the Minotaur, the Siren, the Dragon, the Hydra, the what were some of the other ones? My other ones fell off. Loch Ness Monster. And he used each of these illustrations of comparing these mythical creatures with something in an author's life that might be holding them back. The Minotaur represented fear. The Siren represents distractions or things that draw us away. The Dragon, I'm blanking on what the dragon was. The Hydra really stuck with me because the Hydra is being overwhelmed. And so the reason he asked us to put them on is to watch them fade away because they're temporary. None of us got tattoos that I know of while we were there, actual tattoos, but these temporary tattoos are going to fade away. And so the point he was making is watching us visualize, these things disappear, and the idea that we are called to slay these beasts. And so it's this awesome visual, and I imagine that stuck with you too.
Yeah, absolutely. I could recognize many of the beasts that I've battled in the past.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so as we talked at the conference, I'm not going to put you on the spot in the sense of you don't have to tell the whole story, but one thing that I found absolutely endearing about you and your wife was that the two of you met at this very conference. Was that in 2018?
That was in 2021.
Okay.
It is a cool story.
Okay,
Yeah.
So do you mind telling even a little piece of it? Because it was the most adorable meet cute I had ever heard.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2021, the night before the conference, I was laying in bed and just feeling deeply lonely for whatever reason. And I prayed a very simple prayer. I prayed asking God for a companion. And I felt this incredible peace and confidence that the prayer would be answered, which is highly unusual for me, at least. So I went to sleep, and then the next morning I hopped on the plane and kind of forgot about it. I remembered it, but I was focused on the conference and thought, that'll be nice someday when it happens. And then when I landed, I walked onto the shuttle, and there was my future wife on the shuttle. I saw her, and everything came rushing back to me. And
were there angels playing harps? Like,
I was honestly terrified. I remember thinking something like, I didn't mean now. I'm not ready.
I love that answer. Wait a minute. Hold on. This is too soon.
Yeah.
And so she actually shared with me a couple things too. So if I could add this piece to the story where she said she looked at you and recognized you. So you were recognized as the author who had published, the fantasy novel at 19.
Yeah.
And how that must have felt for you is what I'm curious about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I went and sat down. I actually sat down behind her because I was too afraid to talk to her. But she turned around and struck up a conversation, and she ultimately said, "Oh, I know you. You wrote Kestrel's Midnight Song." And she said she read it and she liked it. And that was definitely it. I definitely wanted to marry her right then, because that had never happened before either.
Okay, yes, I love that. And one also just side note is that your sister-in-law, her sister happens to live in the Tampa Bay area where I am. So I'm very much looking forward to hopefully getting the opportunity to meet her. It's such a small world because I know you're out west. But getting to chat with you and your wife was an absolute delight at the conference. And so I'm very thrilled that we have you here now. So let's get into, I want to talk about the story that you sent me that is featured in Havoc online magazine. And they also do print anthologies of story collections. Primarily, I think they're more known for I don't know that they do daily. Do they do daily flash fiction?
They do it 5 days a week.
5 days a week. Okay. So I believe the website is gohavoc.com. You can get weekday flash fiction, and it's incredible stories on there. I had the privilege of being accepted in 2019. A short story of mine, a flash fiction piece, was accepted to Havoc. So fellow Havoc author here. And when you sent me your story, I was enraptured. Do you have any objection to me reading the first paragraph of this story?
Oh, not at all. Go ahead.
Okay. It starts, "It hardly qualified as a graveyard. 19 graves in a single row, no fence, no road, no flowers. The foliage grew unchecked. Raw boulders from the nearby stream served as tombstones. They didn't need markings, for each grave contained the same person. Me. Whoa. Do I want to read the rest of that story? So you hooked me right away. And this is 1,000-word story or less. And it is complete. It is tight. It is raw and intense. There is so much going on. So tell us a little bit about this story. What led you to write it? What gave you the idea? And repeat the title one more time, because I thought I had it in the heading, but I don't. So I don't want to mess up the title.
Yeah, the title is The End of Everything.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so the way Havoc works is they have different seasons with different themes. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to start with the theme that they give you. And the theme for that season was stories that sing. You had to write a song or write a story inspired by a song. And so the song that I started with, was Somewhere Only We Know by Keane.
Ooh. Great song.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so had you, tell me, how many short fiction pieces have you had with them? A bunch, just this one, or you have quite a few?
I've had 3 with them.
3 with them. Okay. And just to get into a little bit of the nitty gritty of what it's like to be an author submitting to literary magazines, whether online or otherwise, tell us about that process a little bit. Do you have a bunch of short stories that you just kind of spray out into the online realm of different magazines, or do you kind of go one at a time? What's kind of your submission method when you've got short stories?
I don't have a specific method. I tend to just start with a moment of inspiration, whether that happens just from what I'm thinking about or a dream or something else, and see what I can make out of it. The nice thing about Havoc is 1,000 words is not very many, so it really forces you to tighten your writing and make every word count.
Yes. and I'm glad you mentioned that, because writers who are listening, it's a great exercise, even if you don't publish. It's a great exercise to write 1,000-word story or less and work on tight writing, work on powerful emotional impact in a short amount of words. And this story, you've really nailed it here for me personally. It very much was deep emotional impact. And I was following with what Havoc's doing this week. I believe I saw something where their stories, if you want to read their stories, you have to be a subscribed member. If it's a story from their catalog, if you want to read the daily story, it's free. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you can go to their site and read the story of the day, Monday through Thursday. Was it Friday?
Friday.
Yeah, and but if, for example, you want to read my story back from 2019, you have to be a member and get into their catalog that way through subscription. I believe I saw something that they are opening up their whole catalog this weekend. Did you happen to see that same thing? I want to make sure I tell the listener correctly.
I saw something about that, although I thought it was last weekend, but I could be totally wrong.
Okay, so that may have just passed. Well, so I will mention that they do that periodically. They open up their catalog for anybody to jump in and read the back catalog of their stories. So, for example, to read your story, they could jump in there and go to the back catalog. Where do you have stories in other magazines that you'd mention?
That's a good question. I honestly don't think I have any other.
Okay. So Havoc is your primary place that you're submitting.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. And do you find yourself regularly writing flash fiction in the midst of your novel writing? Because we're going to talk about the novel you're working on too before we say goodbye.
I do write short stories when I just feel inspired to, but yeah. I have been making a concerted effort to focus on the novel lately.
Okay, good. Let's go there. So tell us about the novel. What are you working on now?
I'm working on a science fiction novel titled The Splendid Grave.
You and your titles. I just love them.
Thank you. Yeah, and this was inspired by a dream that I had many years ago about convicted teenagers in a maze where they were trying to gather enough balloons to float to freedom.
And that was a dream. That was a dream that you had. Oh my goodness. I love talking to authors, especially speculative fiction authors, because I find a lot of camaraderie. I have dreams like that too. And I go, do other people have this experience where you dream in story, and often very speculative story? So it was so wonderful to hear your dream. And would you say what you're writing from that dream, is that just a very basic concept that you got to start with, or are you really sticking to this is exactly what the book is going to be? How much are you going to vary from what you remember from the dream?
The first draft of the novel followed the dream very closely. At the time, the title I had for it was Balloon Hunter. And once I reached the end, I actually tried pitching it to a few places, but it became clear that it had too many holes. So I started over, and over time, each draft has been more and more different, and to the point there are now no balloons at all in the story. So very different.
Don't you love how that happens as the drafts continue on? And so, do you have a working title for this book?
Yeah, the working title is The Splendid Grave.
Oh, I'm sorry. You've already said that. We've already gone over that. Okay, so did you, over this weekend, were you ready to pitch to an agent or a publisher, or were you more just sitting back, taking in some of the craft and life lessons of these incredible speakers that we had? Or did you do any pitching to publishers or agents?
I didn't do any pitching. I didn't have anything ready for that. The goal was mainly to, form relationships and get some inspiration to keep writing.
Awesome. Oh, I just love that. And I cannot wait till that book comes out. Would you consider it like a YA dystopian, or what category is there a subcategory that you have in mind for it?
It is dystopian, probably suspense, you could maybe call a subcategory.
Okay. And targeting adults or young adults?
The main character is 20 years old. So I guess maybe somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between. Yeah. They sometimes call that new adult. So yeah, that could be. But often sometimes the publisher makes that determination once you get to that point. Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us, Edward. And can you tell everybody where they can find you? And for example, where can they find the books that you have published? We've talked about gohavoc.com. They can find your flash fiction if they become subscribers, or jump in on one of those free weekends or free times when Havoc has all their catalog open. Where can people find you and your writing online?
So I do have a website currently that redirects just to a Facebook page, but that's edwardsand.com. Kestrel's Midnight Song is still available as an ebook on Amazon.
Yes.
Yeah, and then also there are two different print anthologies that Havoc did that I'm published in. They are titled Stories That Sing and Vice and Virtue. And I believe those are available on Amazon. Stories That Sing
is one of the anthologies. Is that the anthology that contains the story that I just read?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it's that's a wonderful thing for the listener to know. If you want to know what's going to happen with that short story that I just gave a little teaser of from Edward, go to Amazon and pick up the print anthology collection of flash fiction stories by Havoc called Stories That Sing. Correct?
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. So I want the listener to know where to get it. Thank you so much. We're going to go to commercial break before we bring on our next guest, but it has been such a pleasure to talk to you, Edward, and I look forward to keeping up with your writing journey.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Awesome. All right. Take care, and we'll talk again sometime soon.
All right. You too.
Bye now. Okay, we're headed off to commercial, but we will be back with YA debut novelist Lindsay Llewellyn. Stay tuned.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Looking for inspiration? Looking for something that will intrigue you? Then this book is for you. Jim Lamb's poems start out as caterpillars, creepy, crawly, and raw. Then a miracle happens as they transform into colorful, bright, and conspicuous works of art. You can find Jim's new book of poetry, Hurting Butterflies, at Amazon.com. It's the perfect gift for the book lover in your life, even if it's you. Hurting Butterflies, the perfect holiday gift, available on Amazon. Get Hurting Butterflies.
Do you dread being called on to speak at meetings or family functions? Have you envied those who can sway an audience with well-chosen words? Do you know that people who speak well earn more money, earn more rewarding careers? Gain the confidence to master any speaking situation. Toastmasters will allow you to find your voice. Go to toastmasters.org to locate the club nearest you.
Are you an author, an artist, an inventor? Then you need to protect your valuable intellectual property. You need Larson & Larson. We have the experience and knowledge to help you with all of your legal needs, from processing trademark, copyright, or patent applications to negotiating licensing agreements and handling litigation. The attorneys at Larson & Larson in Largo, Florida can help protect you. Call us today for a no-cost consultation at 727-546-0660 or visit our website at larsonpatentlaw.com.
Have you ever faced disaster? The Red Cross is always there for you. The Red Cross responds to a call for help every 8 seconds. They have never turned anyone down. Now they need your financial support so that they can be ready to help you when the need arises. Donate online at redcross.org. Thank you.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hello and welcome back to Sci-Fi Hour at Joy on Paper Radio, a program for writers and those who dream of writing. And I just had a fantastic chat with author Edward Sands. Next, we're going to be having Lindsay Llewellyn on the show. But before I bring her on, I would like to, I'm going to ask the wonderful producer, Big Ed, to play a book buzz for her book, The Chaos Grid. Hello, fellow sci-fi readers. This is author Bria Burton reporting for Joy on Paper with your science fiction book buzz. Today's communique to galaxies near and far includes a 2024 YA dystopian, The Chaos Grid by Lindsay Llewellyn, with stellar narration by Jennifer Jill Araya. The novel is available in print, ebook, and audiobook. Now, let's download the book buzz. Juniper Conway is on the run, not only because she's hell-bent on revenge for her parents' murders, but also because she's uninterested in returning to the Dome City where her aunt and uncle want to help the very people responsible for killing her mom and dad. The outer grid isn't safe either. Man-made attempts to control nature went terribly wrong, resulting in the global weather collapse and leaving an uninhabitable wasteland where roving beasts now roam. The bureaucrats are trying to legalize nanodrugs, which means life will become that much harder for anyone who lives in the Texas domes. But Juniper is a basic, which means she's lacking any synthetic upgrades, such as enhanced muscular strength like the synth bully who's trying to steal another girl's train pass right in front of her. Something in her makes it impossible not to intervene, and she gives the bully her own train pass. Now Juniper's stuck, and her best friend shows up just in time to try to stop her from taking her last chance at freedom. True, it's insane. Ride the grid, feed the people, earn a living, fight to stay alive. To her surprise, her best friend tags along as they teleport to the outer grid station, ready to enlist. If Juniper stays alive long enough, she just might get her chance at revenge. Author Lindsay Llewellyn grew up on comic books and punk rock music, convinced she'd spend her life illustrating superheroes or singing on stage. When she's not writing or reading, she designs book covers and paints on shoes. She lives on a small Texas farm with her husband, their 5 children, and what some might call a zoo of animals. This is Bria Burton with your Futuristic Fiction Fix, signing off. And Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Hi, Bria. Good to talk to you.
It is so wonderful to talk to you. And the guest I just had on was at Realm Makers, And you were also just at Realm Makers. So I had the wonderful opportunity to meet you in person and to, you had sent me your book signed, but I went ahead and had you sign it some more. So, so it was just absolutely wonderful to meet you in person and to now get the opportunity to talk about your wonderful book and about you. And I just wanted to start by asking you, tell us about you as a writer. Were you writing as a little kid? Was there something in your life that led you to start writing later? What's kind of your backstory with writing and even writing this novel in particular?
Yeah, sure. So I actually did not start writing as a child. I actually started my creative endeavors with drawing comic books, drawing pictures of my Barbies, just anything I could get my hands on. And I really loved comic books. I really enjoyed the stories, but sometimes the words would kind of jumble around on the page, especially with novels. And so I grew up with mild dyslexia, although it was kind of undiagnosed at the time. So I struggled with reading. My mother, however, she is an author, and she was not going to let that slide. She said, no, reading is wonderful. You're going to love it. I know it. You just got to keep giving it a shot. So she gave me my copy of The Scarlet Pimpernel one time when I was a teenager, and I said, I can't read this. And she's like, no, just give it a chance. It's got sword fights. It's got romance. You're going to love it. And I did. I really persevered and finished that book, and I did fall in love with the novel after that. So that was kind of my first beginnings in reading. Writing came much longer later on when I was an adult. I taught youth group, and I really saw some of these girls, some of the things they were reading were not really lifting their spirits. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'll give them a shot at writing. And I used my mom a lot to help me when I wasn't doing so great at it. But that's kind of where it all started.
Well, thank you for sharing that struggle with dyslexia, because, wow, here you are with your novel. And am I correct that this is your debut?
It is my debut, yes.
Oh, so that, I mean, what an encouragement. Listeners, take heart. There are things that do come up against us as writers, and those are things that can often be overcome, or they just become part of being able to write from a place of deep emotion. And I imagine there was some of that in there as you were writing this novel.
Oh, yes, very much so.
And so let's talk a little bit about the illustration part. So I'm in the studio. Obviously, we're talking on the phone, and the radio listener can't see us. But if you're watching on my live Facebook page, or there's the live YouTube channel with the Tan Talk Radio Network, I have your beautiful book that I'm going to grab real quick. I'm going to grab the book, hold it up for everybody. And can you talk about this book and the illustrations that you did for it, like the little cards that are in the book?
Yes. So inside the novel, there is a a map of Texas, and I actually got to illustrate that, which was really exciting that my publisher gave me the approval to do so. I was very thankful for that. You got the domed cities in there, and I actually used the skylines of Dallas and Houston and Austin and San Antonio, and then I just made it a little bit more futuristic and a few extra buildings that are definitely not there. So that was a lot of fun. My son helped me with some of the geography. He's really into geography. Said, "Mom, no, there's no mountains over there. There can be this there. There's the rivers here." So he really helped me with that.
I'm holding up to the camera so people can see Texas 2224, and
yes.
that's your setting. And this map is so cool. You've got the outer grid there, and then the city domes all around. Okay, and then you've got character cards.
Yes.
I seem to have dropped Juniper. Where'd she go? Here she is.
I know.
Our main character, Juniper, she's got this gorgeous, long, dark blue hair. Tell us a little bit about drawing these characters and what were some of the inspiration for the style? I mean, you mentioned comic
Perfect,
books.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
I so get that vibe as I look at these. Her best friend Tori at the beginning of the novel, we meet Tori, and then Dax we meet shortly. Doesn't take long to meet Dax, but he's not at
No,
the
yeah,
very
he's
beginning.
very early on.
Tell us a little bit about creating this artwork and how you go about creating your artwork.
Oh, sure. So I knew I wanted some kind of character art to go with it. And the story is a post-apocalyptic story, but it's not, I would say it's not dark and colorless. It has lots of colors. So
Agreed.
I like to say it's neon.
Oh, neon dystopian. I love it.
Neon dystopian, yes. So it kind of has a mix of cyberpunk mixed in there, too.
Yes.
So,
oh, very much. Yes.
Oh, yes. And I wanted to have that kind of comic book style to go with it. And so you'll see that. You'll see some of the halftone behind them and some of the ink blots behind them to give them kind of that grunge look, but also the really bright colors. So, I was really excited to draw them and to give them kind of their personalities. So just give a little extra element. Mm-hmm.
And that is one of my questions. So you hand draw these characters?
Yes. So I hand draw them on my art tablet. So I don't draw them by hand separate. I draw them with my pen and my tablet. And then I use some other effects to get them colored in and such. But yes, they're hand drawn, but with the computer.
Okay, understood. So meaning these are not stock characters that you got off, one of the websites that you can get stock characters from.
No.
These are your creations, hand drawn with your program, obviously. But I mean, what an incredible gift, especially as an author who is writing in this genre. And what would you say in terms of your book cover? Now, did you design your own book cover or did someone else?
I did not design it, but I worked really closely with the designer. His name is Kirk DuPont, and he does fantastic covers. So I was very lucky to be one of his clients. So,
your cover is incredible. It's so evocative. It's so cool. And you also do design book covers, though. Am I right about that?
That is correct.
Yes,
I design lots of covers.
Okay, so and not specific to sci-fi, all genres. Is that?
Yes, I actually started out designing covers in the romance genre, which I still love to do, and I'm still highly involved in that. Cozy mysteries, suspense, some nonfiction here and there, sci-fi, fantasy, paranormal. Pretty much, if you ask me to design it and it's a novel, I'll go for it.
And I know we mentioned our mutual friend Rita Moreau. Have you done any of her covers?
Yes. I have done a few of her covers, yes.
We got to shout out Rita Moreau. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
She's a cozy mystery author who does our mystery book buzzes here at Joy on Paper. And I love that I'm talking to her book cover artist, who's also a sci-fi author.
Oh, she's wonderful. I love working with Rita.
Yes. Oh, how great. And so you've got book covers that you're doing on top of your writing. Did you do any book covers for your mother, who you mentioned as an author?
Yes, I actually started out doing book covers with my mom. So she decided to go indie back in, I think it was like 2012, maybe 2011, somewhere around there. And she said, "Hey, how about you design my covers?" I was like, "I don't know how to do that. I just draw on the computer." And she said, "No, you can do it. It's not that hard." For me, I guess she said.
For you, it won't be
pretty
that
hard.
Yeah. And
she had a lot of confidence in me.
Yeah, obviously, that's what I was going to say. Obviously, she had much confidence in your ability to learn what you didn't already know. I adore that. Just the mother-daughter relationship right there. It's so sweet.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get into the novel a little bit. So when, this novel was just released this year, correct?
Yes, in April of this year.
April. And so I got my copy. I got to enjoy the ride. And tell us a little bit about, the listener got to hear the book buzz. Tell us a little bit about some of the story ideas and oh my goodness, you have these fantastical beasts that are kind of mythical meets cyberpunk. And you have the giant rigs that are driven all over the outer grid. And you've got the domed cities, and that there's a scene where the domed city wall is coming down. Oh, it was intense. It was so good. And so tell us a little bit about some of these just big sci-fi ideas and how you were able to kind of make those come alive on the page.
Oh, sure. So like I said, I was a big fan of comic books, and in comic books, there's very short stories.
Yes.
And you really have to get the action. You got to get somebody interested right away. You got to get to the action. And then you have to leave right on cliffhangers right at the end of every comic book. So I'm used to that style of writing. And so my favorite part about writing is definitely the chapter endings. And so I was thinking, what could be really interesting that I would enjoy reading? And I thought of, okay, if Texas was in the future and it's this crazy world, what if all the animals got mutated? Okay, so what kind of crazy animals could we have that would cause lots of trouble? And so my mind kind of went from there. I got some inspiration from Dune, from Mad Max, a little bit from Blade Runner, just really the aesthetic of those stories.
You've nailed it, by the way. That aesthetic, you've nailed it. It's so awesome. Go on. I'll stop interrupting.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah. And so that was kind of the idea there. And like, how would this world be dangerous, and who would want to even go out in this world, and why would they want to go out in this world that's so dangerous? And so that kind of really gave me a good characterization of the shippers who drive the massive trucks. And I thought, okay, if they do this for a living, why do they do it? And if they care so much about feeding other people, so they've got to be people who care about other people, but they also have to be people who are really tough, no nonsense kind of guys. And so that's really where their characters came from in this world. And then the people who live in the domes they want everything quick. They want just enhancements very quick. Like, what would a world be like where everything was just super quick and convenient, but yet people still didn't care about their own, or they didn't like the skin that they were in and they wanted something better. What would they do to themselves? So that's kind of where that came from too. So lots of different ideas kind of just thrown in a pot.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And who does that? That resonates with our current day of just instant gratification. Is that not the age we live in? And so it's not hard for the reader to put themselves as a reader. I'll just speak as a reader. It was not hard to put myself in the story that you were telling. It was, in my mind, very plausible, very plausible. And so the character Juniper, you kind of touched on her motivation. What would motivate someone to go out into this dangerous Texas wasteland? So how did this character come about? Do you see any of yourself in this character? Is she nothing like you, but just somebody, that you created and have just had a story that you wanted to tell through her eyes?
Oh, well, in some ways, I think that she's not like me, but in a lot of ways, I think she is. And sadly, I think the things I don't like about myself, she's like that, where she just doesn't. She gets grudges and she doesn't want to forgive other people easily. So I feel like that's bad. But something that resonates mostly with me with her is she says no first. She says, no, I'm not going to do that. When God calls her to do something, she says, nope, not going to do that. And she feels a calling to help, and she says no. Throughout the novel, she always says no.
Right.
But then instantly she regrets it, and she says, okay, I'll do it anyways. And I think that's very similar to my story, where I say, no, I'm not going to write this novel. It's too hard. I'm not going to be an author. I'm an artist. I'm not going to do that. I've already pigeonholed myself into being this category. But then God was like, no, I'm the one who tells you who you are. And this is what I want you to do. It's not who you are. It's what I'm telling you to do. And so I said, okay. I mean, it's been 11 years of no, and rejections, but eventually.
Meaning the process of getting, when you say 11 years, the process of getting this particular novel published?
Yes, it was 11 years trying to get it published.
Thank you for sharing that as well with the listeners. Yeah, that's not an easy journey.
Yes. Yes, and I think, some of it has to do with, I think the perseverance that God already put into my heart early on in my mind reading a book in itself was such a struggle. But then when you found out the good things of it, it was worth persevering. Like the story itself, you found the perseverance. And so sometimes I think maybe that was something God put in my life early on so that now he's like, you have something bigger that's going to take even more of a struggle for you. And I want to prepare you for that. And I think that sometimes when we persevere through something that's hard, it helps us to do the harder thing later.
Oh, well said. Yes. Oh, that's what an encouragement. And for example, there are potential listeners who are on the similar journey of, I've been getting rejection after rejection after rejection. Tell us a little bit about when the rejection became the yes, if you don't mind sharing that.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I went to a writers conference and I went in front of a publisher, and one I really, really was excited about a couple of years ago. And this was so I quit about 2 years let me rephrase that. I quit for 2 years when my twins were born.
Yes. I know you have about 5 children, right?
So many. I love them so much. So I quit and I said, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to be a mom. That's all I'm going to be doing. But then this writing conference came up, which is Role Makers. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try it again because my husband was saying, you should do it. I'm like, okay, I'll try again. And I went to the pitch and I said, okay. And I did my whole pitch, but then I got rejected again. I was like, okay. So then I just went back and I said, you know what? I don't feel like giving up this time. I'm going to try again. And so I revised the beginning.
That rejection was not deterrent. It was almost oh, wait a minute. I can do something here. I can work on this.
Yeah. At that point, I really knew that this was what I was supposed to be doing. So I said, no, I'm going to try again, even though it's hard. So I revised it. I hired actually an editor to help me with not the story itself as much as with my query process. And reworking that part of it. And so she was like, you have a good book. You're not pitching it very well. So we reworked my query, sent it off again, this time through email, through digital pitching. And I was out actually on vacation with my family, and my husband, when we got home, we got into my kitchen and my husband said, you got this email from the publisher. And he didn't even tell me what it was really. He just started reading it saying, we would like to see your manuscript. Oh. And I was standing at the time and I collapsed. You should let me sit down.
Oh. And your husband gallantly came over and caught you before you hit the floor, of course.
Oh, he was on the other side of the kitchen, so I went down fast, but I didn't hurt anything, and he picked me up. Yes, he's like, well, "Are you okay?"
My goodness!
I was like, this was the yes I've been waiting for 11 years, and I finally got the yes, and so it was emotional.
Yes. Oh, what a beautiful story! I love that he was reading it aloud and you collapsed. I'm sorry that you collapsed, but that just. As the listeners can enjoy just kind of the story that you were experiencing before they read your fiction story. And oh, isn't that the way of it? Sometimes our real lives are even stranger than the fiction stories we tell. And okay, sure. So you got your yes, and you're published with Enclave. And tell us a little bit about working with Enclave, how you've enjoyed or anything that you want to share about that.
Oh my goodness, working with Enclave has been an absolute dream. Their whole team is very responsive. They're very supportive. But not only that, the team outside of their immediate team, so the other authors, I feel like I've just gathered a whole group of friends, and we're working towards the same goal. We're trying to build a large pond of fiction that really gives people hope. And encourages not only young people, but people of all ages, really, and just to give them somewhere to go that's got very clean and good fiction that will spark their imagination, and they'll have a wonderful time. And I love how they're growing. But yes, I love working with Enclave for sure.
And so when you talk about clean fiction, so is your book, it's categorized as YA dystopian. Is it targeting a Christian audience or a general audience? Talk a little bit about the targeting there and what clean fiction even means.
Sure. So when I say clean fiction, I mean that there is not going to be foul language in it.
Mm-hmm.
There is not going to be a lot of gratuitous scenes. Now that there are dark parts mentioned in my book.
Meaning gratuitous violence?
Right. So it's not heavy on the violence. I don't describe, there's not violence for violence sake. There's purpose between,
great way to word it,
behind the violence that happens. There's hope in it. So there is that in my book. There's not gratuitous sex scenes either. So that's also what I would consider to be clean.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you, and this is not something that happens with books for the most part, but I was able to chat with an author named Steve Raza, who I met at Realm Makers a few years ago. He was on the show, and he actually puts ratings on his book. If you go to his books, you go to his website and scroll down, you can see his catalog. He's a prolific author. My goodness.
Oh, yes, he is.
When you look at his book series, there are ratings like a PG, a PG-13, a G for the little kids. Would you be able to rate your book PG, PG-13? Is that comparable?
No, sure. Yes, I would say PG-13. There are a couple scenes in there that, while it's not described really heavily, but it might be something that a parent would want to read first before, I think, giving it to their child if they're going below 13.
Yes.
But like I said, there's not foul language. There's not gratuitous violence. But yeah, probably PG-13. And I love Steve. I think that's such a great thing that he does. So.
Oh, yes. Yeah. He was a fun author to chat with as well. I imagine I'll have him back sometime too. So what are you working on now? What's next? And then we do sadly have to say goodbye, but let's talk about what's next and how people can find you online.
Sure. So right now I am finishing up book 2 in the series. It was just
I was going to ask if there was of course, at the end, I'm like, there's got to be a sequel. Okay, go on.
Yes. Book 2 in the series is going to be coming out summer of next year. And it was just announced today, officially on Enclave's newsletter.
We're part of the announcement.
Yes, today is the big announcement. So it will completely be finished as a duology. So this will end the entire story.
Okay.
But there's just more to tell. So
yes. Oh, yes. It was quite a cliffhanger, actually. And where can they find you online? And your books and your book?
Sure. You can find me online at lindseylewellen.com, which is LYNDSEY, Llewellyn, LEWELLEN. I know it's kind of a weird spelling, .com, or on Instagram, which is just my name. And those are the two places I think you can best reach me.
And is your book available on all the major retailers?
Absolutely. So Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anywhere that books are sold. Sure.
And so that's The Chaos Grid by Lindsay Llewellyn. Go to her site, go to Amazon and get this book. So thank you, Lindsay. We will absolutely have you back for your sequel. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Bria.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Oh, this has been a wonderful Sci-Fi Hour. Thank you all for tuning in. I am Bria Burton, and we will see you next month with 2 more amazing sci-fi authors. And if you're tuning in to Joy on Paper, we're every Tuesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, and Patsy will be back. So be sure to tune in, and we will see you all later. Bye-bye now.